Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Olivia, and I'm the Arts Administrator here at the Pump House Regional Arts Center. And today I'm joined by Lynda Wallis, who currently has her work on display at the Pump House from her series, Trust Yourself to Feel Exactly What You're Feeling. Her work will be on display here from January 11th until February 25th of 2023. In this series, Lynda uses torn paper, dried flowers, and more to create a vibrant flowing rivers of colors, shapes, and textures. Welcome, Lynda, and thank you for joining me today. And how about we start with you discussing your history in creating artwork?
Oh, okay. Thanks. What a lovely introduction, Olivia. Thank you. Um, I've been making art my entire life. When I was 3 years old, I did my very first painting. And my great grandmother was a painter. And my grandmother brought me over to her house one afternoon. And my great grandmother let me paint. She gave me a little tiny canvas and she just squeezed some fresh oil paints out on uh, on a plate, and they looked like M&Ms, with their big, tall, swirly top. And I just wanted so badly to stick a brush into one of them. So she gave me a little canvas and a paintbrush, and I did a painting really quick of swans on a river with branches hanging down. And I vividly remember doing it. And a couple days later, she showed up at my grandmother's house. She had framed it and painted my name on the bottom of it. And it was such an incredible affirmation for me. It was just so, this was a painting in a frame. I still have it today. I actually just got it back not too long ago. So I've always known that I was an artist, and I studied art all through school. I went to the Art Institute straight out of high school, which apparently everybody doesn't get to do that straight out of high school. But I was there for 3 years, and then I ended up in lacrosse and graduated from Viterbo after studying there for 2 more years. So I have a really, really beautiful, well-rounded classical art education.
Wonderful. And what type of work were you doing once you graduated from college?
Um, it takes an artist, it took me a really long time to find my voice. And by that, I mean what it was I wanted to represent with my art. I was always painting and drawing, and I did a lot of work for the natural world. And then when I was about 30, after I had my first child, my business began unintentionally. I knew it was a gift from the universe, and I began creating signs and maps for nature preserves. And I was on the forefront of the restoration movement in northeastern Illinois, which turns out to have been an epicenter for restoration across the country and across the world. And I was just in the right place at the right time. And so I began traveling to all these incredible nature preserves with the people that knew the most about the preserves. And they would tell me the stories of the land, because every time a piece of land is set aside, there's a reason for it. There's some type of a history. It's an insect, it's an American, a Native American story. It's something about the geology or hydrology. Whatever the reason is that a piece of land has been set aside, they would tell me that story. And then my job as an interpretive sign maker would be to figure out how to tell that story in 3 paragraphs or less, but to get people to come over and become engaged and even look at the sign, it needed to start with a beautiful illustration of something. So very, very early on, I was doing pretty incredible pen and ink illustrations of the natural environment here in the Midwest. So that's what I've done to support myself. And yeah. And I still do it today.
Great.
And there's little bits and pieces of those illustrations in my work now, which is a fun thing.
Yeah. So speaking of that, as we move into some of the work that you'll have here at the Pump House, what inspired you to start this body of work outside of your illustration work that you do?
Um, I've been so far, my career spanned about 35 years as a freelance illustrator, which is a very long time. And I was a single mom during all those years too. Still a single mom, but my kids don't live with me anymore. But I always knew I would get my turn to do my own art for all the years that I was single parenting and I had kids living under my roof. I had to do whatever I had to do to pay the bills. And so I just, wow, I worked so hard as an illustrator. And then when it became time, when my kids finally left, and they're wonderful, they both launched well, um, it finally became time for me to do my art. And, that was a couple years ago that I finally had this time to create my own art. And it was a really interesting process. I realized after so many decades of creating recognizable images that I didn't want to make choices about what images I wanted to make. So, which was really funny to me. It's still kind of funny. But what I do love about making art is the color and the textures and the layers and all that minus imagery. So I'm not entirely sure why I started to tear paper that first day I started to tear it, but it was just right. And so that was about 5 years ago that I started doing that, and it all had to be put on hold for almost 2 years while I moved. And then after I settled in, it took me a little while to get going. So this is really very, very recent work. But that's
Yeah.
what it comes out of, is not wanting to make choices about imagery.
hmm Is that kind of the inspiration for your title of this series of work, to trust yourself to feel exactly what you're feeling in the sense of how you choose the colors and textures that you put into these less recognizable images, so to say?
Oh, that's a good question. It's partly that, but it's also that title is directed at the viewer. Um, people can be very intimidated by art because they feel like you have to know things, or you have to talk a certain way to enjoy it, and none of that's true. All you need to do is get yourself in front of something, and whatever that looking at that art makes you feel, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, it doesn't matter. It's valid, and you need to trust yourself. And that's what good art, I think, does for us, is it makes us feel something that we might not necessarily feel. So that title is really directed at the viewer more so than me assigning it to how I work.
Okay, great. Well, this is one of the pieces that we have on display here at the Pump House titled That Hurt. If you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit about this piece that we have on display.
Um, this was actually maybe a funny choice to choose for this. I was in a relationship and there was some really tough things that hurt. And I made this piece, and I still to this day really enjoy it. And one of the fun things about this piece is it can hang in all four directions. And photographing it for this show really reminded me of how much I enjoy it. I really like the little close up on the right hand side of the screen. But it also taught me that I don't really want to weave my own personal stories into these new works, because I look at this and I'm reminded of the tough parts of that relationship, and so I don't want to be reminded of that anymore. But I like this piece a lot, and I felt a lot better after I made it.
Yeah, art is very self-expression based,
It
emotion based
is.
too.
It
Yeah.
is.
All right. Well, here's another piece much more colorful than the last one that we just saw. Spring is also on display here. If you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about maybe your process and how you go about creating these pieces or attaching all of the different pieces of torn paper, leaves, and flowers like that.
This one was really fun. This one I made purely for myself last winter. It was just so gloomy, a little bit like it is right now. And I love this lime green color, and I just wanted to completely give into that. And so I was thinking about how beautiful spring is and that new leaf green and this is tissue paper. It looks just like the leaves that just very first come out of the soil early in the spring. So it was really sort of a joyous piece to make. And then in this one, there's a really lovely pen and ink illustration that I created as a name sign for a nature preserve in Sleepy Hollow, Illinois, a whole bunch of years ago. And I have literally thousands of this type of illustration. So I always laugh and I say, I'm saving my children the need to get rid of this stuff. I'll never be able to do something with all these illustrations before I die. But so I put this in here, and this is a trout lily, which is an ephemeral spring wildflower that you would find in the woodlands in the Midwest here. And it comes up really early. It's a beautiful plant. And it's got these beautiful polka dotted leaves. And then in the close-up on the right-hand side, there's also some dried leaves that my daughter collected out of our garden about 10 years ago. They're not from a trout lily. It's from something called a polka dot plant. I can't think of the Latin name, but I really loved putting the polka dot real leaves next to the drawing of the trout lily with the drawn polka dotted leaves. And then there's also something that I've really put in quite a few of my pieces are flower petals that my daughter also collected. And there you can see them on the left-hand side. They look like a little school of fish swimming. And I didn't realize initially that they looked like fish swimming, like from above, until I did a couple of these and I thought, I really like that. I think I want to put that in as many pieces as I can to have that consistency through all the work. So, again, this is just a really joyous piece that was hopeful about the coming of spring. There's a 4-leaf clover in here that I found. There's some beautiful little tiny dried flowers. They might be lobelia. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that just made me think of spring and to know that it would be coming soon. So that was what this piece was about.
Well, great. Here's another piece of yours that we have on display, moonfish.
This one was really fun. And this one started in a place I really love this tissue paper that's got, I've got some dark blue tissue paper that's got silver sparkles in it, which is wild. And I just love it. And I love layering it together because the more you layer it, the more different colors of blue that show up. And I also have this beautiful lime green paper. And so this started out just with me wanting to play with that tissue paper with the sparkles in it and the lime green. That was the only place this started, was right there. And I had so much fun with that. And this piece is quite tall. It's almost 4.5 feet tall, I think, and about, I don't know, maybe 16 inches wide. Again, there's the little flower petal school of fish, but then there's some other shapes in this that, again, when I stood back and looked at it, they looked like big fish that were swimming that you could see from above. And that's when I came up with the name moonfish. They just look like fish to me swimming. And to me, this is kind of got a moonlight quality to it. So this is a piece I just adore. And I was taking everything out in the back to photograph things last summer. And on the way out, I was going past this flower bed that had these beautiful giant allium in it. And I had to set the piece down behind the allium just to take a picture of them because it was so beautiful with the allium. So much of my work really is connected to plants and the outdoors and growing things. And I really love that piece in the garden. It's not a really good spot for it, but it was a really great place to take a photo of it.
Yeah,
But
I
this is a
agree.
fun one.
Yeah, I agree. I had to put that picture in this PowerPoint just because with the natural light in that photo as well, I feel like it really brings out the colors and things, and it's just so fun to see it next to purple flowers. So, and it does, it ties into nature, and I think that photo was just a really great physical way of seeing how it ties into nature. So,
Well, it shows where so many of my color choices come from too. They come from the real world. I'm not really making this stuff up. I'm just copying the feelings and the colors that I see out in the real world.
well,
Yeah.
great.
I'm glad you included the photo in the garden. That was a good choice.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so these are two other pieces that we have on display of Linda's here in the Pump House Regional Arts Center. And I urge everyone watching to come to the artist reception that will be on February 3rd from 5 to 7 p.m. Linda, as well as the other two artists, will be there as well. And I will say, seeing these works in person, as well as like the size comparison as well, you really see those textures and how the light reflects off of certain metallic areas of these works. So will be great to see in person. And thank you, Linda, for joining me. Are there any last words or things that you would like the viewers to keep in mind when viewing your work in person?
Well, that's the title of the show. Trust yourself to feel whatever it is that you're feeling. Um, yeah, and just really enjoy looking at the work and know that there's no paint. It's all torn paper in the pieces, torn paper and illustrations and dried flowers and little bits of this and that and feathers, and just have a lot of fun looking at them. Whatever you feel is perfect.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.